In 1433, Cosimo de' Medici was exiled from Florence. Not because he broke a law, because he had become too wealthy, and everyone knew it. The city's rival families united against him, terrified of a man whose fortune they could see, but not control. He spent 1 year in exile. When he returned, he made a decision that would define the next 3 centuries of Medici power. He would never again let anyone know exactly how much money he had. The moment you become visibly wealthy, you become a target, not for thieves, for the state, for your family, for people who were your friends last year. The Medici understood something most people never learn until it's too late. Wealth is not the problem. Visibility is. This is not about humility. This is about survival. The rules in this video are not moral guidelines. They are strategic protocols used by the most successful covert financial dynasty in recorded history. Here's what happens the moment people know you have money. First, the state notices. Taxes increase. Regulations appear. Audits become frequent. Then your family notices. Suddenly you owe favors, loans you'll never see returned, investments in their failing ideas. Then your friends notice. The dynamic shifts. You're no longer equal. You're the one expected to pay every dinner, every trip, every emergency. Then strangers notice. The lawsuits start. The business proposals. The people who suddenly remember they helped you once. This is not paranoia. This is documented pattern behavior across every century of recorded wealth. The Medici watched this destroy rival families in Florence. The Strozzi, the Albizzi, the Pazzi, all of them made the same mistake. They built palaces that could be seen from across the city. They wore their wealth. They announced it. And one by one, they were bankrupted, exiled, or killed. The Medici did the opposite, and they survived. The Medici Bank at its peak controlled more wealth than most European kingdoms. But if you walked through Florence in 1450, you wouldn't have known it. Their main headquarters looked like a modest merchant's office. No marble facades, no gold detailing. The only indication of power was the volume of letters arriving daily from London, Bruges, Rome, and Lyon. Inside, the Medici tracked every ducat. Outside, they appeared unremarkable. This was intentional. Giovanni di Bicci de' Medici, the founder, set the rule in 1397. Never let the public see the full scope. His son Cosimo followed it religiously. Even when Cosimo became the de facto ruler of Florence, he never took a title. No duke, no prince. Just a private citizen who happened to control the city's finances, its politics, and its military alliances. When foreign diplomats asked how much the Medici were worth, the answer was always vague. Enough, comfortable, modest by the standards of kings. The reality? They were richer than most kings. They just never said it out loud. Contrast this with the Strozzi family. Filippo Strozzi wanted everyone to know he had arrived. In 1489, he began construction on the largest private palace Florence had ever seen, Palazzo Strozzi. 3 stories of perfect rusticated stone, symmetrical, imposing, visible from every major street. It bankrupted him, not the construction costs. The envy costs. The moment the palace was half built, the Medici-controlled city government introduced new taxes, luxury property levies, inheritance restrictions. Suddenly, Filippo's visible wealth became a legal target. He died in exile. His sons finished the palace, but they never recovered the family's former power. The building still stands today, a monument to the cost of being seen. The Medici, meanwhile, lived in a palazzo that looked modest from the street. Inside, it held the finest art collection in Europe, Donatello sculptures, Botticelli paintings, but you only saw that if you were invited. And invitations were rare. Stealth was the entry cost to survival. The Medici had a saying that was never written down but passed through the family for generations. Show nothing, control everything. This wasn't about hiding illegal activity. The Medici Bank operated within the law, more or less. This was about information control. If your enemies don't know how much you have, they can't calculate how much to take. If the state doesn't know your full assets, it can't tax them accurately. If your family doesn't know the total, they can't divide it prematurely. Opacity is a defensive position. The Medici applied this at every level. Their account books were coded. Only senior family members understood the full structure. Branch managers in London or Bruges knew their local numbers, but not the consolidated total. Even the Pope, who banked with the Medici, didn't know the real scope of their holdings. This wasn't secrecy for secrecy's sake. It was operational security for a financial empire spanning a continent. Most people think wealth is about accumulation. The Medici knew it was about retention, and retention requires invisibility. Lorenzo de' Medici, Cosimo's grandson, took this further than anyone. He became known as Lorenzo the Magnificent, a public title. But the magnificence was strategic. He spent lavishly on public works, festivals, art, churches. The city loved him. But his personal wealth, never discussed. His private accounts, hidden. He let the public see generosity, never abundance. There's a difference. Generosity makes you loved. Abundance makes you a target. Lorenzo understood that if people saw him as a patron, rather than a plutocrat, they would defend him instead of envying him. It worked. He ruled Florence for 23 years without a single official title, while families with far less wealth and far more visibility were destroyed around him. The lesson is surgical. Let them see your impact, never your reserves. Now we get to the rules. These are not suggestions. These are the operational protocols the Medici used to stay invisible while controlling the financial infrastructure of Europe for 3 centuries. Some of these will feel extreme. That's the point. The Medici weren't playing a game of comfort. They were playing a game of survival in a world where visible wealth meant political extinction. If you're building something real, these rules are not optional. They are the difference between keeping what you build and watching it get taken. Rule 1. Never discuss numbers. Not with friends. Not with family. Not even in vague terms. The moment you give someone a figure, they anchor to it. They calculate from it. They expect from it. The Medici never disclosed total assets to anyone outside the inner circle, not even to branch managers in their own bank. If someone asked how business was, the answer was always the same. Stable, sufficient, modest for our needs, nothing more. Rule 2. Live one level below what you can afford. The Medici could have built a palace that rivaled the Vatican. They didn't. Cosimo's residence was elegant but restrained. No gold leaf, no excessive scale. Comfortable, not ostentatious. This wasn't frugality. It was camouflage. When your lifestyle matches your visible income, no one questions the gap. When your lifestyle exceeds it, everyone starts investigating. The moment you live above your declared means, you become interesting to the wrong people. Auditors, rivals, thieves, the state. Rule 3. Separate public generosity from private wealth. Lorenzo spent millions on public art and festivals. Everyone saw the spending. No one saw the reserves. This is critical. If you're going to spend visibly, spend on things that build goodwill, not things that signal personal excess. A donation to a hospital makes you a hero. A luxury car makes you a target. The Medici mastered this distinction. They were loved for their public spending and invisible in their private holdings. Rule 4. Never explain your decisions. The more you justify a financial move, the more information you leak. The Medici didn't explain why they opened a branch in Lyon or closed one in Venice. They just did it. Silence is not suspicious when you've trained people to expect it. Explanation invites interrogation. When Cosimo decided to fund Brunelleschi's dome for Florence Cathedral, he didn't announce a budget. He didn't hold a press conference. He just funded it. The result spoke for itself. The method remained private. Rule 5. Keep separate channels for different audiences. The Medici showed one face to the Pope, another to the Florentine government, another to their competitors, and another to their family. None of these groups saw the full picture. This isn't deception, it's compartmentalization, a military tactic applied to finance. Each relationship gets the information it needs and nothing more. Your business partners don't need to know your personal net worth. Your family doesn't need to know your business margin. Your friends don't need to know either. Rule 6. If you must display wealth, rent it. The Medici understood the difference between owning assets and appearing to own them. When they needed to host a foreign dignitary, they borrowed art from allies. When they needed an impressive venue, they used public spaces they'd funded. The appearance of wealth when strategically necessary, the reality of it kept private. This applies today. The leased luxury car, the rented estate for an event, the borrowed credibility. You get the strategic benefit without the permanent target on your back. Rule 7. Never correct someone who underestimates you. If a rival thought the Medici were wealthy but manageable, the Medici let them think it. Underestimation is a gift. It makes people careless around you. They reveal strategies they wouldn't reveal to someone they considered a real threat. Cosimo was famously underestimated early in his career. Rivals saw him as a cautious banker, not a political operator. By the time they realized the truth, he controlled the city. He never once corrected their assumptions. He let them learn the hard way. Rule 8. Build wealth in private. Spend it in private. Enjoy it in private. The Medici's greatest luxuries were never public. Their private art collections, their manuscript libraries, their inner courtyards. These were seen only by invited guests, and invitations were rare and strategic. This is the opposite of modern wealth culture, which demands performance, Instagram, social media, public validation. The Medici would have considered this insane. Why would you broadcast vulnerability? Every post is a data point. Every luxury photo is a target. The truly wealthy don't perform. They enjoy in private and let the world assume what it wants. Rule 9. Create confusion about the source. The Medici Bank had so many branches, partnerships, and subsidiary operations that even experienced auditors couldn't track the full flow. Money moved through Florence, Rome, London, Bruges, and back again in patterns that were legal but impossible to follow completely. This wasn't money laundering, it was structural complexity. The more complicated your financial structure, the harder it is for anyone to know exactly what you control. Rule 10. Teach your children invisibility, not performance. The Medici raised their heirs in private. They were educated by the best tutors in Europe, but always behind closed doors. They learned banking, politics, diplomacy, and art, but they were taught to never flaunt knowledge. Lorenzo's sons knew more about European power structures by age 15 than most adults would ever learn. But in public, they appeared modest, respectful, understated. This is the opposite of modern parenting, where children are taught to perform achievement. Social media profiles showcasing accomplishments, public displays of success. The Medici knew this created future targets. They trained their children to hold power quietly, to know more than they showed, to control more than they claimed. The result? The Medici dynasty lasted 300 years, while flashier families burned out in 2 generations. Your children are not trophies to display. They are the next generation of your operational security. Train them accordingly. Pause for a second. Think about one person who knows too much about your finances. One person. Who is it? That's your weakest link. The Medici audited their inner circle constantly, not because they didn't trust their family, because they understood that information leaks happen. A casual conversation, a drunken boast, a moment of frustration. Even trusted people talk. The solution isn't paranoia, it's structure. Limit what each person knows to what they operationally need. Your accountant doesn't need to know about your side investments. Your business partner doesn't need to know your personal net worth. Your family doesn't need to know the company's margin. Compartmentalization isn't cold, it's strategic survival, and it's how the Medici kept their empire intact while everyone around them was being destroyed by their own inner circles. Information is a weapon. Control who holds it. The Medici also understood seasonal visibility. There were moments when they needed to be seen, and moments when they needed to disappear. When a new pope was elected, the Medici made themselves visible. They hosted banquets. They facilitated loans. They demonstrated usefulness. Once the relationship was secured, they faded back into operational silence. This rhythm is critical. Constant visibility is exhausting and dangerous. Constant invisibility makes you irrelevant. The Medici oscillated strategically. Visible when it served a purpose, invisible the rest of the time. This applies to modern business. Launch a product, be visible. Product established, step back. Raise funding, show up. Funding closed, disappear. Every moment of visibility should have a strategic purpose. Everything else is risk without reward. The default state is always invisible. Visibility is the exception, not the rule. Now the uncomfortable part. The Medici also knew when to let others take credit. Cosimo funded Brunelleschi's dome. Everyone knows this now. But at the time, Brunelleschi got the glory. Cosimo stayed in the background. This wasn't modesty, it was strategy. If Brunelleschi succeeded, Cosimo gained influence with the church and the city without direct visibility. If Brunelleschi failed, Cosimo's name wasn't attached to the disaster. Let others be the face. You be the structure. This applies everywhere. Fund a startup, but stay off the cap table publicly. Support a political candidate, but never appear on stage. Finance a building, but let someone else cut the ribbon. The power is in the structure, not the spotlight. And the spotlight is where everyone aims when things go wrong. The Medici built half of Florence. Most people who visit today don't even know which buildings they funded. That's not a failure of legacy. That's the perfection of the strategy. The Medici also weaponized ambiguity when directly asked about wealth. If a rival asked Cosimo how much the bank was worth, he had a rehearsed response. Enough to meet our obligations, enough to serve our clients, enough to support the city's needs. Notice the pattern. Every answer is technically true and completely uninformative. This isn't evasion, it's precision. You're not lying. You're just not giving the number they want. Most people feel compelled to answer direct questions with direct answers. The Medici understood that directness is a choice, not an obligation. When someone asks what you're worth, you don't owe them an answer. You owe them a response that ends the conversation without creating suspicion. The difference is everything. Practice your version of this now, because the question will come, and your answer will determine whether you stay invisible or become a target. Here's what most people miss. The Medici's invisibility wasn't just about avoiding taxes or envy. It was about maintaining operational freedom. The moment your wealth is public knowledge, every decision you make is scrutinized. Why did you invest in that? Why did you sell this? Why did you move money there? The public assigns motives. Regulators open investigations. Competitors adjust their strategies based on your perceived position. Invisibility removes that friction. When no one knows what you have, no one questions what you do with it. You can pivot without explanation. You can take risks without public panic. You can fail without everyone knowing. This operational freedom was the Medici's greatest asset. It let them move faster than rivals who were trapped by their own visibility. Speed matters in finance, and visibility is the enemy of speed. The less they knew, the faster the Medici could act. The Medici also had a rule about written records. Minimize them. Financial historians love the Medici because their records still exist, but those records were always minimal. Transactions were recorded, totals were not. Branch profits were noted. Consolidated wealth was never written down. This wasn't accidental. Written records are evidence. Evidence can be seized. Seized records can destroy you. The Medici kept what they legally had to keep and nothing more. Internal knowledge was transmitted verbally. Key decisions were discussed in private, never minuted. This is harder today with digital trails everywhere, but the principle holds. The less you document, the less can be used against you. Don't put your net worth in a spreadsheet that lives in the cloud. Don't send emails detailing your full financial strategy. The digital age makes invisibility harder, which means it's more valuable than ever. The Medici would have hated email, and they would have been right. Now, a personal moment. I didn't always understand this. Early in my path, I made the mistake of being visible. Not dramatically, just enough. I mentioned a successful investment to the wrong person. That person told another person. That person told their network. Within 3 months, I had relatives I hadn't spoken to in years asking for loans. I had competitors adjusting their pricing based on assumptions about my position. I had an audit that was aggressive in ways previous audits weren't. Nothing illegal happened, but the friction increased massively. The cost of visibility isn't always obvious. It's not a single event. It's 1,000 small cuts. Conversations you have to navigate. Expectations you have to manage. Relationships that change. I learned to shut up after that, and the friction disappeared. This isn't theory. This is documented experience. Visibility costs more than you think, and you only realize the cost after you've paid it. The Medici also understood geographic dispersion as a form of invisibility. They didn't keep all their wealth in Florence. Branch offices in Rome, Venice, Milan, London, Bruges, Lyon, and Geneva. Each branch operated semi-independently. If one was attacked, the others survived. If one country turned hostile, the wealth was distributed elsewhere. This principle applies today. Don't keep all your assets in one country. Don't keep all your accounts in one bank. Don't keep all your businesses under one entity. Dispersion isn't just about risk management. It's about making it impossible for anyone to see the full picture. A regulator in London sees the London branch. A tax authority in Florence sees the Florence operation. No single authority sees everything. This isn't evasion if it's legal. It's structural invisibility. And it's how the Medici survived wars, regime changes, and the collapse of entire governments, because no single government controlled their full position. Another rule the Medici lived by: never be the richest person in the room, even if you are. If you walk into a negotiation and everyone knows you have more money than them, you lose leverage. They'll anchor high. They'll expect you to pay more. They'll assume you can afford to lose. Cosimo would often send a less wealthy representative to initial negotiations. The representative would claim limited authority and budget. Only after terms were favorable would Cosimo appear to finalize. This isn't deception, it's negotiation structure. The person with visible wealth loses flexibility. The person with hidden reserves gains it. Apply this everywhere. Don't show up to a real estate negotiation in a luxury car. Don't wear the expensive watch to the vendor meeting. Don't signal wealth to people whose incentive is to extract it from you. The Medici understood that perceived scarcity is a negotiating asset, and perceived abundance is a negotiating liability. Control the perception, control the outcome. The Medici also practiced selective disclosure. Not everyone in the family knew everything. Cosimo's sons knew more than his nephews. His nephews knew more than his cousins. His cousins knew more than branch managers. This created a hierarchy of information that mirrored the hierarchy of trust. The closer you were to the center, the more you knew. This prevented leaks. It prevented family disputes about assets people didn't even know existed. It prevented younger generations from becoming entitled before they'd proven themselves. Modern families often do the opposite. They share everything, believing it creates trust. It doesn't. It creates expectation and entitlement. The Medici knew that information is earned, not inherited. A 20-year-old doesn't need to know the family's full net worth. A 30-year-old who's proven competence does. A 40-year-old running a branch of the business does. Trust is built through performance, and information follows trust, never the other way around. Here's another pattern. The Medici never celebrated wins publicly. When a major deal closed, there was no announcement. When a profitable year ended, there was no banquet. Celebrations happened privately, with only the people directly involved. This had two effects. First, it prevented rivals from knowing what was working. If the Medici opened a profitable new trade route, competitors didn't find out until years later, when it was too established to counter. Second, it prevented internal entitlement. When wins are celebrated publicly, people start expecting them. They start feeling owed. The Medici kept their teams focused on the next move, not the last win. This is opposite to modern business culture, which demands public celebration, press releases, social media announcements, award ceremonies. The Medici would have considered this strategically insane. Why would you tell your competitors what's working? Why would you make your team complacent? Celebrate privately, stay hungry publicly, and never let anyone outside your operation know which moves are working. The Medici also had a protocol for inheritance that ensured invisibility continued across generations. Wealth was never divided equally in public documents. Official wills were modest, listing only assets that had to be declared by law. The real wealth was transferred through private trusts, offshore entities controlled by the family, but not directly owned by any individual. This meant that when Giovanni died, or when Cosimo died, the public records showed a fraction of the actual transfer. Tax authorities saw only what they were required to see. Rivals couldn't calculate the next generation's position. This structure required planning. You can't build it after you're dead. The Medici set this up decades in advance. Modern estate planning often does the opposite. Everything goes through probate, public records. Anyone can look up what transferred and to whom. The Medici would have considered this financial suicide. Your heirs shouldn't have to start from scratch on invisibility. You build the structure now, so they inherit the shield, not just the wealth. There's also a psychological component to this that the Medici understood deeply. Visibility creates internal pressure. When everyone knows you're wealthy, you start performing wealth. You feel obligated to maintain appearances, to upgrade when you don't need to spend when you'd rather save. This performance becomes a trap. The Medici avoided this by separating public persona from private reality. Publicly, they were successful merchants. Privately, they were the financiers of Europe. This separation freed them from performance pressure. They could live comfortably without needing to prove anything to anyone, because no one knew what standard they were actually capable of. Modern social media has made this exponentially worse. Every aspect of life is performed. Every purchase is signaled. Every upgrade is content. The Medici would have seen this as voluntary imprisonment. You're not living your life, you're performing someone else's expectation of what your life should look like. And that performance costs you the operational freedom that made the wealth possible in the first place. The Medici also understood that invisibility compounds over time. The longer you stay invisible, the easier it becomes. People stop asking, they stop wondering. They accept your privacy as part of who you are. But this requires consistency. You can't be invisible for 5 years, then post a yacht photo, then expect to go back to invisible. Each break in the pattern resets the clock. Each moment of visibility creates new questions, new attention, new pressure. The Medici were consistent across generations. 300 years of operational invisibility. This created a cultural expectation. The Medici don't talk about money. Everyone knew this, so people stopped asking. The family trained their social circle to accept opacity as normal. You can do the same, but it requires discipline. Every time someone asks about your finances, you deflect. Every time someone probes your success, you redirect. Eventually, they stop asking, not because they're not curious, because they've learned you won't answer. And that consistency is what makes invisibility sustainable long-term. Finally, the Medici understood that invisibility is not isolation. They maintained deep relationships, strategic alliances, political connections. They were deeply embedded in Florence's power structure, but their wealth remained separate from their relationships. People knew the Medici were influential. They knew the Medici had resources, but they didn't know the full scope, and that uncertainty created respect. When you're visible wealthy, people calculate. When you're invisible wealthy, people speculate. Speculation creates more caution than certainty. If a rival thinks you might have 10 million, they approach differently than if they know you have 10 million. The uncertainty is a defensive buffer. The Medici cultivated this deliberately. They never confirmed, they never denied. They let others wonder, and that wondering kept them safer than any vault or guard ever could. Invisibility is not about being unknown, it's about being unknowable. You're present, influential, respected, but your actual position remains strategically ambiguous. That ambiguity is power. Now the cost if you ignore all of this. The cost of visibility is not hypothetical, it's documented across centuries. Families destroyed, fortunes seized, dynasties ended. The Strozzi, the Pazzi, the Albizzi, all wealthier than the Medici at various points. All gone because they were visible. Their wealth made them targets for political enemies, envious rivals, and aggressive states. The Medici survived the same threats because no one could measure their full position. When Florence turned against wealthy families, the Medici were seen as influential but manageable. When taxes increased, the Medici's visible assets were modest. When rivals plotted, they underestimated. This pattern repeats today. Visible wealthy people get hit first in economic crises. They get targeted first by aggressive regulation. They get sued first when lawyers look for deep pockets. And they get socially isolated first when wealth becomes politically unpopular. The Medici avoided all of this, not through luck, through systematic, generational discipline around information control. Some people will call this paranoid. The Medici would have called it realistic. They lived in a world where visible wealth was a death sentence. Your world is not that different. The mechanisms are more subtle. Tax audits instead of exiles, lawsuits instead of assassinations, social media pylons instead of political coups. But the pattern is the same. Visibility attracts threat. The modern version is just more bureaucratic. When you're visibly wealthy, you're not just a target for criminals. You're a target for every struggling relative, every opportunistic lawyer, every activist looking for a villain, every regulator looking to make an example, and every competitor looking for an edge. The Medici understood this at a level most people never reach. They built a system that treated information as more valuable than money, because information determines who gets to keep the money, and they kept theirs for 3 centuries, while everyone around them lost theirs in decades. That's not paranoia, that's pattern recognition. The final Medici rule is the simplest and the hardest. Once you achieve invisibility, never trade it for validation. This is where most people fail. They build wealth quietly. They stay invisible for years. Then they hit a certain number, and they want someone to know. They want recognition, respect, acknowledgement that they did it. The Medici never had that moment, because they understood that validation from others is the most expensive purchase you can make. It costs you your invisibility, and invisibility is what allowed you to build the wealth in the first place. You're trading the foundation for applause. Lorenzo de' Medici could have declared himself Duke of Florence. He had the power, he had the wealth, he had the support, but he never took the title, because the title would have made him visible. It would have made him a target. He chose operational power over ceremonial recognition, and he died in his bed, wealthy and in control, while titled nobles around him were assassinated, exiled, or bankrupted. The lesson is clear. Validation is a trap, and invisibility is the prize. Everything in this video comes down to one question. Do you want to feel wealthy, or do you want to be wealthy? Feeling wealthy requires visibility, signals, recognition, other people knowing. Being wealthy requires the opposite: silence, opacity, control. Most people choose feeling wealthy. They get the house, the car, the watch, the Instagram validation, and then they wonder why their wealth doesn't compound, why the taxes keep increasing, why the relatives keep asking, why the lawsuits keep coming. The Medici chose being wealthy. They built systems that protected their position across generations. They valued control over recognition. They understood that real wealth is not about what people see. It's about what you control when no one is watching. This is the most important financial decision you'll ever make. Not how to make money, but how to keep it invisible once you have it. Because making it is hard. Keeping it visible is impossible. And keeping it invisible is the only sustainable path. The Medici's dark money rules are not comfortable. They require discipline most people don't have. They require giving up validation most people crave. They require accepting that real power is exercised in silence, not celebrated in public. But they work. For 300 years they worked. While dynasties rose and fell around them, the Medici endured. Not because they were smarter than everyone else, because they understood one thing everyone else missed. Visibility is not power, it's vulnerability disguised as power. And the moment you mistake one for the other, you've already lost. These rules are not suggestions for people building small wealth. They're protocols for people building generational wealth, for people who understand that the goal is not to look rich, the goal is to stay rich. And staying rich requires becoming invisible, not isolated, not unknown, but strategically unknowable. That's the Medici legacy, and it's available to anyone willing to shut up and execute. So here's where you are. You've seen the rules. You've seen the cost of ignoring them. You've seen 300 years of evidence that invisibility works. Now you have a choice. Most people who watch this will do nothing. They'll go back to performing wealth, posting updates, seeking validation, making themselves visible because it feels good in the moment. A few will do something different. They'll close their social media. They'll stop explaining their finances to people who don't need to know. They'll start building structure instead of seeking recognition. The difference between these two groups is not intelligence. It's not resources. It's identity. The first group needs other people to validate their success. The second group validates it internally and moves forward. The Medici were the second group. For 3 centuries. That's why you know their name. Not because they performed, because they endured. So the question is not whether these rules work. The question is whether you're capable of following them. Most aren't. A few are. You already know which one you are. One last thing. The Medici never announced when they had won. They never declared victory, because they understood that the game never ends. There's no finish line where you can suddenly become visible and celebrate. The moment you think you've won and can relax your guard is the moment you lose. Lorenzo de' Medici was at the height of his power when he died. He still lived modestly. He still kept his finances private. He still deflected questions about wealth, because he knew that wealth is not a destination. It's a state that requires constant operational security. This is hard for modern people to accept. We're taught that success has an end point. You reach a number, you retire, you relax. The Medici would have called this naive. Wealth is not a number you reach. It's a structure you maintain, and maintaining it requires the same discipline at 100 million that it required at 1 million. The rules don't change. Your commitment to them determines whether you're building a fortune or just having a good decade. The Medici understood something that most people never grasp. The real enemies of wealth are not external, they're internal. It's not the taxman who destroys you, it's your need to be seen. It's not the competitor who takes your position, it's your need to be validated. It's not the relative who drains your account, it's your inability to say no. The Medici's dark money rules are not about protecting yourself from others. They're about protecting yourself, from the human need for recognition, from the social pressure to perform, from the emotional desire to be known. They built a system that removed these internal threats by making invisibility the family's identity. Being private wasn't a sacrifice. It was who they were. When invisibility becomes your identity instead of your strategy, it stops being hard. It becomes automatic. That's the final evolution. You're not choosing to stay invisible every day. You're just being yourself. And yourself is someone who doesn't perform for others. That's when you've truly become Medici. When invisibility is no longer a rule you follow. It's just who you are. Most people will watch this and move on. A few will stay and change, decide which one you are. No fluff, no noise, just strategy. Subscribe if you're not one of the ones who stays average.